Hello YouTube. So this is a motor that came off of a 2010 Yamaha V-Star. It's an XV250, and I've never seen any videos of people going into detail about how to replace the friction plates for the clutch. So I'm going to run through how to do that real quick. It's fairly simple. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bolts that hold the housing in place, and this will be where your oil goes as well. You don't have to take the oil filter out, nor do you have to take the oil filter cover off. I just did it to make it a little easier, but you can do that if you want to. There's 3 bolts that hold the oil filter cover on. Take that off, pull your oil filter out. Anyway, once you have those 10 bolts out, this whole plate will simply slide off of here like this, and be careful to not damage the gasket that comes off of there. This is what your gasket looks like. And mind you, there's guide pins on this housing as well, so when you're putting your new gasket on there, just be sure to make sure that you have that gasket lined up inside of those guide pins. There's one on here and there's one right there. So once you have that off and you've gotten your gasket off, I would recommend replacing the gasket anyway, since you're going to take it off. Also, another thing to be careful of is this little O-ring right here. Make sure that that stays in place, and if it comes out, do not lose it, because that goes to the oil pump, and that's what supplies oil to the rest of the motor. So once you've got your clutch cover off, you have 4 bolts right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're 10mm bolts. Now, because I've already taken this out, I just simply took a screwdriver and screwed them back in to where I can get them off with a screwdriver. But if you've never taken it off before, I would use a 10mm to get these off, and be careful not to strip these out. So one thing I also want to mention before we get started is there are 2 little arrows right here and right here, and there's also a notch on the front most friction plate, and there's an arrow that the clutch plate, not clutch plate, but the clutch cover that lines everything up. This arrow does not have to be lined up with that, because obviously this just rotates freely. But when you're replacing each of those pads, you're going to want the one that goes in front with this notch to be lined up with those 2 arrows right there. So you take your 10mm and you unscrew each one of these bolts like this, and there will be springs on each one, behind each one of these bolts. So you undo your bolt, take your bolt and your spring out, just lay it in the clutch cover. Now, this motor obviously has had damage done to it. This motor is just going to be for parts, because the bike that I have, it has the same motor and everything in it. So if something ever mechanically goes wrong with that other bike, I'm just going to pull parts off of this one, except for obviously the cylinder head, or the piston head, I'm sorry, not the cylinder head, because that has been melted through, and the cylinder wall has also been melted through. So I will have to get, if I wanted to repair this engine, I would have to get the cylinder wall re-sleeved and the piston head replaced. But I don't want to do that, because I'm just going to use this as a learner motor to learn about these bikes and learn about the mechanicals of it. So once you have all 4 of those bolts out, you're simply just going to put your fingers in here and pull that out very slowly, like that. Set that off to the side, and now you can gain access to the friction plates. Now, what I'm going to do to make this easier is I'm just going to slide all of these out at once, very carefully. I'm just going to slide all of these out at once, just like this. I might have to set the phone down. Slide out each one of these plates. There we go. So you just simply slide all your plates out like that, and when you are replacing them, it would be a good idea to soak each one of these plates for about 10 minutes or so, just to allow them so that they don't bind or burn up or whatnot. So these are what your plates look like, just like that. They're pretty thin. These are pretty thin because they've been used. I don't know if these are actually usable or not, but I already had the ones in the motor that's in the bike. I've already replaced them anyway. But I'm not too sure about the specs on how thin these are supposed to be. I'm sure you can look that up and find out. But once you pull these out, take note that this one, the frontmost one, meaning the one that goes closest to you, does have this notch, and this should be the last one that goes in when you're putting the plates back in there. And then in terms of reassembly, it goes plate. So you simply line up the grooves in the grooves like that, slide that plate all the way back, and then take one of these metal plates, and if you'll notice that on this plate there is a indentation on one side. You can't really tell on the camera, but if you feel, this side sticks out more. This side, the side that has the wear on it, which if you're taking yours off you can tell, this is going to face inward, so the flat side is going to face outward. So you just take it, line it up in the groove, line it up in the groove like that, slide it all the way back, put your next disc in, your next plate, slide it all the way back, take your next disc, slide it in, plate, disc, plate, disc, and then this final plate, again, this is the one that has the notch on it. So as I said in the beginning of the video, there's 2 arrows right there and right there. So you want to take this plate and make sure that that notch is lined up in those arrows, and then just push it the rest of the way in. Then take your cover and simply slide it on like that. And then if you buy new springs, but you don't have to, but some people do for performance, take your new springs, slide them in each one of these holes like this, bolt, hand thread them into each one of the channels like that. And take your screwdriver, screw each one of these all the way in until it gets tight. Like that right there until it stops and spins. And then once you get it to that point, go across from the one that you just started. Bottom two. So once all those bolts have been tightened down with a screwdriver, take your 10mm and tighten these down 1/4 of a turn each, going across from each other. So if you start here, you go here, start here, you go here, start here, you go there, so on and so forth. As long as you make sure that you tighten these two down and then tighten these two down, or however you want to do it, wherever you start, just always go across from where you started. And like I said, 1/4 of a turn torque wise. And once you do that, take your gasket, line it up. Oops. Let's see. It's backwards. There we go. Take your gasket, line it up like so. I can't do it one-handed, but you get the idea. Put the gasket on there. Take your cover. Now, obviously, that gasket is, well, here, I'll just do this. Uh-oh, those dowel pins fell out. If that happens, just take it. So put it right back where you found it. This one is going to go right there. It's going to go closest to the little viewfinder for your oil. Pop that back in there. That one was kind of loose. I don't think that was supposed to be like that. But anyway, take your gasket, put it back on there. And simply take your cover. Take it, line those dowel pins up. Slide it back into place. Screw all your bolts in, put some Loctite on them, torque them down. Take your oil filter, and when you replace your oil filter, you want this little end that sticks out, you want that to go in first. So you just stick it in there, and it kind of just rests in there. And then once you take the cover that covers the oil filter, it will push that up and make it stay in place. Screw those in, torque them down, and if you lose a lot of oil, refill your oil by simply unscrewing this little black cap right here, putting your oil up top, 10W40, replace your oil, screw your cap back on, and you're good to go. Once again, it's a Yamaha XV250 motor. It only takes about 15 minutes to do. If you have any questions, you can hit me up in the comments and ask away, and I will try to get to them as quick as I can. Appreciate it.